Alrighty, so today we're going to do the season preview of Orlando City, and there's no doubt that Orlando City has been one of the busiest teams in MLS this offseason. In fact, I would argue they probably are the most busiest team this offseason because they made a lot of signings throughout this offseason and have really loaded up the depth and also let go of some of the more well-known player on this team and almost kind of just reshape the core to really be serious in terms of being an MLS Cup contender in the Eastern Conference and also compete in CCL too. Now, that being said, with the way that they kind of load up their roster, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not if this, of course, would work out because we've seen before where, teams have decided to do that, make a lot of changes and change up their roster and load up their depth. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. In fact, there is that phrase, the offseason champion, and we know Orlando City have won that a couple of times. Most recently, I think we've seen them won the offseason champion in 2019 and the 2020 off season, and it turns out to do well. But then there was also in 2015 when they won the offseason champion award, and yeah, that did not turn out well for them, despite making a ton of moves to improve the roster. But that being said, last season, they finished with a 14-6-14 record and finished with 48 points. I mean, they made it to the playoffs again last season, but it was always kind of damning the fact that this team, yes, they have made it to the playoffs after, they've struggled to do so for their first 5 years of existence, but it's now getting to a point where the expectation is higher with the way that it's not just about making the playoffs, but actually make a deep run. And that has not happened. In their free playoff appearance in their club history, they lost in the first round to Montreal last year after finishing 7th and just sneak into the playoffs with 14-6-14 record. Previous season, they finished 6th place with 13-12-9 record and finished with 51 points, but they lost to Nashville SC in the first round. In 2020, they did win a playoff game and definitely will be one of the most memorable playoff game we've seen when they, of course, were able to win in the PK shootout against NYCFC. In fact, I mentioned it in the last season preview of NYCFC, where NYCFC fans definitely don't want to remember that as that was just one of the worst moment in their club history. I'm pretty sure Orlando City will salivate that. They will always remember the Rodrigo Schlegel game, and despite that, they unfortunately didn't go far in that season in the playoffs, losing in the very next round to New England Revolution in the second round and finished with an 11-8-4 record and finished with 41 points. Now in 2019, they finished 11th with a 9-10-15 record and finished with 37 points. And again, this is back when Orlando City was still trying to figure out to be a competitive team, and obviously they did not make it to playoffs. In the previous year, same reason, finishing in 11th with an 8-4-22 record and finished with 28 points and also did not make it to the playoffs. Now, let's get to the signings because, oh boy, this is where we're going to talk about a ton of signings that they have made this offseason. So it all started off with bringing a DP winger in Martin Ojeda. Then they also got some depth in the number 9 position by bringing Romero Enrique. Then they got some more depth, or actually just a replacement in that left back position in Luca Petraccio from TFC, who will be replacing João Matinho, who they sold this offseason. They added more depth with Felipe Martins from Austin FC. And then in the draft, they really go ham in terms of signing all their draft picks. In fact, I think this is the only team as of now that have signed all of their players during the Super Draft. Guys from the Super Draft that they added and end up signing are guys like Luis Grasso, Shaq Mohammed, Abdul Salim, and Duncan McGuire as part of the draft pick. And then recently they also got Rafael Santos, who again, could be another piece in terms of the fullback position. Then they got one of the best names in MLS this season in Dagger Dan Forholson. Then they got Jack Lynn, I believe from Louisville City, and Wilfredo Rivera, who I don't know exactly which club it was from the USL Championship, but he basically came from the USL Championship. Now, in terms of the players that they lost, again, they lost some key players this offseason. One of their key players is Andres Pereira. Well, actually, he's not really a key player anymore. He's more like a guy that has come off the bench, and he is actually now, I think he's with the Philadelphia Union, if I'm not mistaken. Juan, of course, left for DC United. That is definitely one of the key player for Orlando City. I mean, he is probably one of the best attacking fullbacks in the league, and certainly one of the speediest, if not the speediest, attacking fullback in the league. You also got Benji Michel, who also moved on from this team, followed by João Martino, who they sold this offseason to a Serie A club. Then they did lose Junior Urso, who they wasn't planning to sell Junior Urso, but Junior Urso basically decided to request a trade back to his native country because of personal reason. They also lost Nicholas Giacchini, who was picked up by St. Louis in the expansion draft. They also lost Alexander Arviado, Jake Marini, who goes back to his native country in Ireland. They decided not to re-sign Alexander Pato, which, we knew that of course was the case because Pato, as it's been the case throughout his entire career, been battling injuries and really haven't been a big impact to this Orlando City team as maybe Orlando City fans thought that he was going to be. But they also lost another striker in Tesha Akindele who retired this offseason. They also lost Joey Deserve and Luis Grasco, which actually that can't be right. I put him in the super draft here, and I put him also in the out as retired. That can't be right. By the way, I got all of this information from the transfer market website, and the transfer market website sometimes is a little bit inaccurate. So I think this is actually inaccurate. The fact that they mentioned he's a draft pick and then he immediately retired. I mean, you don't pick someone and then basically like about a month later he says, okay, I'm gonna just retire and not actually play for the team. So I think this is actually wrong here and that he's not actually retired. But that being said, in terms of looking at the strength of this team, it's not every day I say that the strength of this team has to be pretty much on the field, because when you look at this team, I mean, they're pretty much stacked in all parts of the field. I mean, in goalkeeper, they're hoping Pedro Galese can have a bounce back year, and then in the back line, I think maybe is the one area that could be a bit of a concern, especially in the depth chart. But Robin Janssen and Antonio Carlos, one of the best center back partnership in the league, and in the fullback position, most likely it's going to be Petracio and Santos in that spot. That should be pretty good. And then going for up top, they definitely have some dangerous pieces too. If Mauricio Pereira can stay healthy, he's definitely one of the more underrated number 10 or even a playmaking number 8 in the league. And as I mentioned, they got that DP winger in Martin Ojeda on one end, and then going forward on the attack. That maybe could be another question in terms of who is actually the number 9, because is Arjan Kara the guy that's going to continue to be the number 9? I mean, I'm assuming it has to be, because you don't bench one of your DP players just because he's not doing well. But that's actually going to be something that I will mention again in terms of looking at the big question, because I just realized in one of the big question, I do have question in terms of the number 9 position for this Orlando City side. But overall, it's a pretty stacked squad. It's also very, very deep, and in some way, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Columbus Crew after they won MLS Cup in 2021, where they were also a very stacked team and a team that was too deep in pretty much every position and looked like a team that is looking to trying to repeat as champion. Now, obviously, if you're Orlando City, you're hoping you're not going to end up in the same fate as that Columbus Crew side in 2021, where as much as it was a very stacked team, yeah, they basically suffer one of the worst injury crises we've seen in this league history, and that hopefully for Orlando City that's not going to happen. But obviously there's no guarantee that is going to be the case, especially as I mentioned, they're going to be in multiple competition, and especially in the grueling task that is the CONCACAF Champions League. Now, the weakness of this team, it's got to be the chemistry within the team and also the depth in the midfield. I mean, if there's one area that I think the depth chart maybe is a little bit of a problem, is in that midfield position. They're not as deep as what some people have said. I mean, they're pretty much deep in everywhere else, maybe in the deep line midfield position. But I think the biggest weakness and really the biggest question of this team has got to be chemistry. And that really kind of leads to the first big question, is the fact that with so many new faces in this team, how will this team gel together? Will they gel together in time where they can definitely make a run in both competition? Now, in terms of CCL, that is going to be tough, because as I'll kind of skip forward to my third big question about this team. Do they have enough quality and depth to compete with with Tigres in the first round. Like, Tigres was literally the worst opponent that Orlando City would have drawn in the first round. And yeah, unfortunately, Orlando City is going to have to deal with them. And, knowing the fact that Tigres is a team that is just an MLS killer. I mean, I know that there are certain teams in CCL and down in Liga MX that always kill MLS team in CCL. Tigres is definitely one of them. In fact, both Monterrey-based team is MLS killer. Like, Rayados is just always an absolute killer in CCL. Same with Santos, who was also a killer, but I don't think they're in this season. And then there was also another team I know that has been a pretty big killer in CCL, but I forgot which Liga MX team is. I mean, I'm thinking it can't be Club America, because Club America has been a team that has lost to a couple of MLS team in crucial moment. But yeah, like I said, this is not going to be easy, and that again, those quality and depth will really be tested. I think mostly in terms of the quality point, because again, this team does have quality, but will it be gel in time for that quality to be shown? It's because it's one thing to face Tigres in the CCL, but to face them that early in the tournament, yeah, it just does not favor Orlando City in this with the team still trying to get the chemistry together. But as I said, going back to the third big question with this team, will Carr still be the main number 9, or someone will push to get his spot? Romero Enrique might be one of the guys that I can think of that could really push Ajan Carra in that number 9 spot. And this is not to say that Ajan Carra is bad at anything. I mean, when you look at the numbers that he had last season, it's actually a decent number. I mean, I know there's been a lot of hatred for Orlando City of how Ajan Carra has performed, but he's able to put up some decent number. But the reason why I think there's been a lot of hatred is the fact that even with the good numbers that he's put in, it's not DP quality number 9 kind of number. And not to mention, he's kind of becoming like a Casper or Shabilko with his own fan base, with the way that, how Union fans have always been frustrated with Shabilko, even though Shabilko has been putting some good number. Well, that's because Shabilko sometimes is able to be finishing some of the easiest chances, and then sometimes he just whiffs on it. He's very inconsistent in terms of his finishing, and a frustrating player to see. And I feel like that's the same case with Ajan Carra. I mean, he's a guy that sometimes he can score some great goals and finish with clinical finishing ability, and then there's times where in some games where he missed some big opportunity that could propel him to be one of the best number 9 in this league. And when you're kind of like a DP kind of player, especially as a number 9, you cannot be an inconsistent finisher, and that's what Ajan Carra is. And this is where he's going to really be having some competition, especially like I mentioned, Romero Enrique could be one of the guys. I heard even some that said that one of their draft pick in Shaq Muhammad could be one of that guy. Some people even compare him to be like the next Daryl DK, a guy that come out of the super draft, kind of came out of nowhere to really light up for Orlando City to a point where they becoming the main number 9 of this team. But who knows? We'll see as the season goes along whether or not if Carra is still going to be there, because I think that is one position that, especially on the attacking end, that's going to be the big question of this team. And then, of course, the bonus question for this Orlando City side: how hot is Oscar Perez's seat coming into this season? I'm assuming it's got to be really hot, because they made a lot of moves. Like I would say this is kind of like an all-in year for Orlando City, in a way where, this has got to be the year where they push to not only go deep into the playoffs, but actually win MLS Cup, or even win some silverware. I mean, I know last season they did win some silverware, and I think that maybe can numb the pain in terms of last season being a very frustrating season of them just barely making the playoffs, but yet lose out in the first round. They can't do that again this season and expect the fact that Oscar Pereira is still going to be there. I mean, again, there's been a lot of frustration with Orlando City fans in terms of how Oscar Pereira has done with this team, and some of the tactics that he's put. Some of the tactics that he's put has really started to go a little stale, and that he's been having a tough time in terms of readjusting in terms of what some teams might have started to figure out how to play again this Orlando City side, and against this Oscar Pereira team. And again, I feel like maybe this is where I talk about before how FC Dallas fans are started reminding Orlando City fans that, yeah, it's good that Oscar Pereira has done a good job for the first couple of seasons for your team, but That's the same thing he did with FC Dallas. And then after that, in the last couple of seasons that Oscar Pereira was with FC Dallas, things did not go very well for that FC Dallas team, to a point where they eventually had to fire him because he wasn't doing very well. And I feel like this maybe is the same case with Orlando City. But like I said, with the amount of talent that they have, this has got to be the year that Oscar Pereira has to figure it out, because if he doesn't figure this out, I think he could be on the chopping block. And especially if this team doesn't even come close to compete for MLS Cup, or even worse, like I said, be like that team in 2015, win the off-season champion and just completely flop that whole season. Or actually, I'm sorry, it's not 2015 I'm thinking about. I'm thinking of 2017. That was the season when they were becoming like the off-season champion, and they just completely flop. Yeah, they can't do that heading into this season with just so much talent and so much expectation that this team needs to have a good run in the playoffs, and also not to mention compete in other competition like the CONCACAF Champions League. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of my season preview of Orlando City. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're an Orlando City fan, what is some of the strength, and weakness, and 3 big question facing this team for this upcoming season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.